Thank you for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We are committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, regulatory actions, and political maneuvers in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact your freedoms.
Please support the State of Freedom by becoming a monthly supporter or member of the Warrior Circle, or by advertising your business, your nonprofit, or your event with us. Go to freedomstate.us. We are bypassing the mainstream media cartel and the establishment political parties in Louisiana and coming directly to you, spreading the uncensored voice of freedom across Louisiana and beyond. Fuego, it's just unbelievable. Whether it's the flame-grilled carne asada or a signature mango margarita. I had one of those too. They're serving up a literal feast of freedom at Calle Fuego. It's just extraordinary. I love the owners, Andres and Jose. They run such a great restaurant. The service is extraordinary. The atmosphere is great. So if you're in Pineville and the Alexandria area or passing through, or if you live there, go to Calle Fuego and tell them the State of Freedom sent you.
Y'all, I'm struggling with my buttons this morning. All right. Well,
I was struggling with my buttons as well, but I finally got the top one done.
Congratulations.
I was thrilled. That was just a small accomplishment, but it meant everything.
Look, today we're gonna have to take the small victories that we get, right?
Well, that was a relatively small one.
Yeah, it's true. But folks, the legislative session may be over, but our review is just beginning. Over the next few weeks, we'll be taking a deeper look at the biggest debates, biggest victories, biggest disappointments, and the biggest lessons from Louisiana's 2026 legislative session. I'm picking up some patterns as I'm looking over the long laundry list of bills that we followed this session. And today, we're kicking things off with a little bit more personal list. Which bills did we love because we believe they'll make a real difference for the people of Louisiana? Which bills did we loathe because they represent bad policy, troubling precedents, broken priorities, or missed opportunities?
Sorry, Danielle, that's my script. I'm sorry.
I'm going to mute you. All right, I did mute you. All right, let me finish what I was going to say here. We'll explain why these bills stood out, how legislators voted, and why they earned a place on our list. And later, we'll hear from Warrior Circle members through our live video call-in feature. If you are a member of the Warrior Circle, the link to that and the instructions are in the Facebook group, and they are also in the app. If you are a paying Warrior Circle member, you can look for the link there and click through. But you do have to call in via a computer, so it's not quite as straightforward as we had hoped. But anyway, we hope that you'll call in if you can. And welcome to Warrior Wednesday. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith in the Constitution, where we're committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. It is Wednesday, June 3rd. I don't know how we're halfway through the year. It's 10 a.m. Central. I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief, the venerable Chris Alexander of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, and we're coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network, on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Please take a minute, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share, hit the like, hit the retweet, send us some stars, do whatever it is that says that you are enjoying what you're hearing and that you want your friends to know about it. You can also catch us later on our audio-only platforms, wherever you listen. So, good morning, Chris. That was a mouthful.
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you 3 days before D-Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the anniversary.
Rapidly approaching.
Yeah. Why don't I get into the scripture of the day, and then we can talk about these bills that that brought us a lot of passion on both sides, whether we felt so strongly about them, or whether we wanted to just burn them down to the ground.
Exactly.
All right. And if you're watching on another platform, please feel free to get in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want your perspective on all the stuff we're talking about today. That's what makes this fun. All right. Let me see. It's Galatians chapter 1, verses 5 through 8. And it says, "All the glory will go to God alone throughout time and eternity. Amen. I am shocked over how quickly you've strayed from the one who called you in the grace of Christ. I'm frankly astounded that you now embrace a distorted gospel. That is a fake gospel. That is simply not true. There's only one gospel, the gospel of the Messiah. Yet you have allowed those who mingle law with grace to confuse you with lies. Anyone who comes to you with a different message than the grace gospel that you have received will have the curse of God come upon them. For even if we or an angel appeared before you to give you a different gospel than what we have already proclaimed, God's curse will be upon them." And the Lord sent me to that passage this morning, and I think it's a great reminder. There's only one gospel, the good news of Christ. And anyone who adds to that gospel, to what that gospel is just bringing confusion where there should be purity. The message of Jesus' suffering, his death, and his resurrection was that he paid the full price that the law could never satisfy. He fulfilled the legal requirement for our sins once and for all, so that we would be restored back to right relationship with God. So what does he require? He requires for us to step into the restoration that he paid for us to receive. And how do we do that? We do it through admission that we've fallen short of his glory, through our thoughts and actions. He requires that we believe in our hearts that Jesus is the sinless Son of God, who died and rose again to take away the sins of mankind, to make us clean. And he requires that we confess verbally that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Lord of all. This is all that's required by the gospel of grace. No more, no less.
Yeah. And you know what, Danielle, at bottom, fundamentally, it is the recognition of our own absolute bankruptcy outside
Yeah.
of Christ, our absolute abject bankruptcy, as C.S. Lewis said. The only way we can begin a relationship with Christ is when we recognize that we, in and of ourselves, bring absolutely nothing to the table except a sack of coals. That's it. That's all we bring. And everything that we are and everything that we hope to do or accomplish is all permeated and originates in His grace. I think one of the things that I do believe, and we've talked before, Danielle, about how sometimes people's sense of their own imperfections, their acute sense of their own vulnerabilities and insecurities and flaws and sins, is a wall that keeps them from
Yeah.
Christ. I think an equally formidable wall that keeps people from Christ is maybe on the other extreme, their inability to recognize that they are in fact morally bankrupt before the throne of God.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
ego can get in the way and keep us from a full relationship with Christ because it's difficult. It can be difficult to completely strip yourself clean or allow God to strip you clean before Him.
Yeah.
That takes profound courage sometimes and vulnerability to do that.
Yeah.
And but I think that the ultimate goal is to recognize truly that we are in fact nothing but a sack of coals before Christ, and everything that we are is a gift of His grace.
Yeah, that's so true, Chris. And not to diminish our value as human beings, right? Because we are valuable because he made us. But
Right.
to
But
say that
in
our,
and of ourselves, yeah,
right, exactly, exactly. Like the scripture says, our righteousness is as filthy rags. So we have,
exactly,
on that front, we have nothing to offer without him. Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, before we get into it this morning, Chris, I just want to make an important clarification because this is something we talked through, that this is not like a ranking of the best bills and the worst bills. And we may still do that. These are the bills that caused us to really have passionate debate or really just erupt in some kind of disruptive behavior as we talked about them amongst ourselves. And you may have seen some of those outbursts here on the State of Freedom. And so we just want to review where those bills landed, the ones we really wanted to see pass through and the ones that we wanted to see go up in flames. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And we absolutely want to make sure that you weigh in on this. We've got a lot. We're bringing each of our three favorite bills, most desired bills, and our most hated bills today. And Chris, why don't we kick off with your three most hated bills? What do you think about that?
Let's do it. Give me but I've
I need
already
to
told
tell you
you.
what they are.
Well,
Yeah.
you need to start me off. You know what they are.
Yeah.
But I don't know what order you want to go in. So tell me which
Okay.
one we're going to go with first.
Before we go, Joseph is in the chat on Facebook. Morning, Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. He says, consider the attack on the judiciary and the legislature. The legislature is better at disciplining judges than the Supreme Court. You want
You know what? Good point. Good point, Joseph. And I don't know whether or not you're alluding to a bill that was pending in the session, which ultimately I think died, that would have allowed the governor input in that process, which we adamantly opposed. But clearly there is a mechanism in the legislature right now, an impeachment mechanism that should be used if they want to impeach a judge. That should be done, and maybe it is better than the administrative process of the Judiciary Commission. I'm not unhappy that both processes exist personally.
to? Yeah. And feel free to clarify your point in the
Yeah.
chat, Joseph, if we didn't properly address it. All right, Chris, why don't we start with your House Bill 307 hated bill by Representative Kyle Green, the one that authorizes the governor and legislators to accept and deposit campaign contributions during a regular session of the Louisiana legislature.
As if, Danielle, as if people looking upon our state from a national view need any other reason to conclude that Louisiana is a corrupt state. Just trot in House Bill 307, which fortunately, and we'll get into that, did not make it through. It did not pass, but we raised a whole lot of ruckus about this bill, Danielle, very early on. And the bill would eviscerate what few remaining ethical boundaries exist between campaign cash and the process of governing. It would allow contributors, donators, special interest groups to donate and hold fundraisers for legislators right in the middle of a legislative session when
Yeah.
they're voting on and considering bills that may directly affect that special interest. Think about that. And it
Yeah.
also allows the governor for a period of, I think, 30 days once the session concludes to accept the same kind of campaign cash and largesse and fundraisers while he's in the process of considering whether to veto or to sign a bill. Can you think of anything more contaminating of the process of governing than, I mean, it's bad enough. It's bad enough that they can do it, a month before or 10 days before the session starts. What do you think they're going to forget? You think they're
Right.
going to forget that you gave them 5 grand 10 days before a session starts when you need a bill passed or whatever? It just really adds, it's so brazen. It is so utterly brazen that a bill like this would be brought, but we opposed it for obvious reasons and very, very strongly. And the bill, I don't even think the bill was heard in the first committee, Danielle. I don't think it got the first vote in what was it, either Civil Law and Procedure or House Governmental Affairs. But I absolutely despise this legislation because it is a microcosm of exactly what's wrong with our state. The mere fact that a legislator would bring this legislation in
Yeah.
the state of Louisiana, as far as I'm concerned, is a stain on our state. Whoever would think this is a good idea. Now, I don't have any reason to believe that Governor Landry had anything to do with this. I don't know, one way or the other. It wouldn't surprise me if he had. But I'll tell you that I guarantee you what happened was the House Government Affairs looked at this and said, "You got to be kidding me. Do you really? You're gonna make us vote one way or the other on this?" And I think that Green recognized he needed to back off. If you think HB 1201 granting massive pay raises and perks to statewide elected officials set off, firestorms in the state. Imagine if this bill had been working its way through the legislature, Danielle. You think that might have brought out some pitchforks?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a pattern of the attempt to legalize corruption and to paste over the fact that there's corrupt behavior going on. Chris, how would this bill have interacted with the bill from last year that Representative Wright passed that had that gaping loophole in it that said, "Oh, if you're from outside of the state or you're a foreign national, you can, if you're a foreign national who just doesn't live in the state, only foreign nationals who live in the state of Louisiana, if I'm recalling correctly, were prohibited from donating to elections. But if you're a foreign national from living in another country, residing in another state, you can go ahead and donate to Louisiana campaigns."
Yeah, and here's how it would have intersected, Danielle. You would have had a foreign national who's not living here, who would have been able to donate large amounts of money, foreigners, to legislative officials and to the governor right in the middle of a legislative session or shortly thereafter, just the same way citizens of Louisiana, the United States, could do. Yeah, that's how it would have intersected.
Yeah. So you could imagine that maybe there would be a few bills that would have different outcomes, like perhaps the bill that Senator Hodges brought to protect the land adjacent to military installations from being owned by foreign adversaries. You might see that perhaps there would have been some money that would have tried to flow to some legislators during that vote, perhaps, to sway the way that would go. Is that a reasonable conclusion?
I think it is. I think it is reasonable. No question about it. I hadn't even thought about that particular concern. But it is, to me, absolutely obnoxious, again, that I will guarantee you, Danielle, that in the state of Florida right now, or in the state of Texas, or in the state of Mississippi, I can assure you that there is not legislation proposed there that would allow special interest groups to inject cash essentially into the pockets of a legislator during the middle of a legislative session or in the pockets of a governor shortly after while he's considering the signing of bills. I guarantee you that that legislation is not pending in those states because none of them would have the brazen audacity to bring a bill like that. But here in Louisiana, it can be brought. But at least they were smart enough to kill it before it was heard in the first committee, even if they were probably doing it to protect their own political interests because they didn't want the backlash.
Yeah. Well, I did talk to a friend of mine who's a state legislator in Ohio about this because I was so outraged when we saw it cross the screen. And she said that in Ohio, this is perfectly legal because they have a full-time legislature. So I could understand that maybe there's no carve-outs of time where you could be specifically fundraising. But since we have a very part-time legislature, I think this is an extremely appropriate way for us to handle this. And also because we have, as a state, shown an enormous proclivity toward corruption, I think it's fair for the people to want this to remain in place, the ban
Yeah.
on the parameters that exist.
It just makes sense, Danielle, and it really doesn't even matter what they're doing in other states. We're trying to
Right.
rehabilitate our image in the eyes of the country, and this is not a good way to go about doing it. This is
No.
just a horrible, horrible look,
Yeah.
and so I'm very, very happy that Green's bill was DOA. Like I said, several episodes you and I railed into this bill hard, and I would say that it is, if not my least favorite, if not my most disdained bill of the session, it's definitely, definitely way up at the top.
Yeah. The next one you hated with the fire of a thousand suns was House Bill 388 by Representative Glorioso. And this was his extremely hypocritical bill, I think. at least extremely asymmetrical bill that was going to prohibit some contractors from pursuing business.
Yeah, and ostensibly, Danielle, it was to prevent these shady roofers after hurricanes from coming in from out of state
Yeah.
and taking advantage of homeowners who are desperate, by preying upon them at their homes and that sort of thing. So I understand that. I get that. But, first of all, we're all adults here. And if you're old enough and mature enough and responsible enough to own a home and live your own life, then presumably you're old enough to be able to handle interactions like that and prevent yourself from being taken advantage of. And if you are taken advantage of, well, that's part of life. It's not the government's role to come in and protect you. I understand basic guidelines and basic rules, but I don't think that's the government's role even in that situation. But what Glorioso's bill would have done, it was so broad in its sweep, it would have essentially banned any local contractor, a young man who does pressure washing, or a young man who cleans your siding or your gutters or whatever, from coming to your house and talking to you and trying to solicit your business, or leaving a business card or some postcards on your door. Basically, it would have banned entirely that sort of
Marketing.
interaction. But
Yeah.
marketing, it's basically marketing, and I'm like, the reason why that bothered me so much, Danielle, is that my oldest son is very successful. He's in the shutter business. He works for Lone Wolf Exteriors, and they do exterior work as shutters and all blinds. And he's extremely good at it. And he gets 80% of his business from direct contact with homeowners, usually physically, sometimes on the phone, but often physically. If this bill had passed, he's out of a job, something that he does really, really well and very ethically he wouldn't be able to do anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you don't have any right to tell him that he doesn't get to earn his living that way. It's not your right to do it, especially when I notice that there's no prohibition in the bill for politicians walking up to people's homes and their doors and soliciting votes or leaving campaign literature there.
Right.
So, at a minimum, Representative Gloriosa, you should include yourself and your like in the bill before you try and impose these kind of illegal and unconstitutional business restraints on other people. I couldn't believe that the bill was even brought. Fortunately, there was a lot of testimony against it. We strongly opposed it, and the bill died. I don't think it got a vote, Danielle, in House. Would it have been House Civil Law and Procedure?
It was
Or
it was House
House
Commerce, and it says that
Commerce.
it was deferred before debate began in
Yeah.
House
So,
Commerce.
so yeah. So no vote on it, and I will give Daryl Deschatel some credit, who sits on House Commerce, and he brought up some of the very same issues that I have brought up and that I've railed against this bill about. So Representative Deschatel did a very good job pushing back on that legislation and helping to kill it. But I really do hope that we never ever have to look at this again.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly hope so too, Chris. I think it seems like the message was received. And the truth is, it's amazing that the legislature often seems to try and protect us from things that we don't need protection from, but the things that we cry and beg and plead for them to protect us from, they refuse.
It, it's
That's
it's it's absolutely extraordinary. They want to babysit us in areas of our life where we are presumably, as competent adults, perfectly capable of managing our own lives. They want to inject themselves into those situations. But when it comes to forcing things on us that we don't want, whether it's carbon capture and sequestration on our property, or mandatory vaccines, or any number of other things, they are perfectly willing to grossly violate the Constitution to do those things.
yeah.
It's extraordinary. You're exactly right, and obviously, they all seem to have some kind of an interest in doing it, and when they do impose those kind of mandates.
Yeah. Yeah, disgusting. All right, your third and final most hated bill, and I also might just mention, there was a lot more difficulty for you and me both to narrow down our most hated bills than there was to find the most favored bills. I was almost struggling to find favorite bills. And my laundry list of bills that I hated seemed to run a couple of pages long. So, with that in mind,
I had to
these
switch my. I had to go from favorite Danielle to least unfavorite, and it made it a little bit easier to choose. Although the ones I'm talking about here, I
yeah,
really
no, they're
really
good
did love
bills.
these bills.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, 210, HB 210 by Representative Michael Mellorin, and this is, I mean, exactly what we were talking about, really, with the corruption and an interest in legalizing corruption for public officials in broad daylight. And this one is remarkably not even just that, but it's also retroactive.
yeah. Exhibit A, Danielle, House Bill 210. I just disdained this bill. We'll go back to last year. Last year, the legislature declared that it would no longer be considered unethical for someone who is serving on a board, a local municipal board or a school board or a powerful local governing board, to be employed by a business that has a financial or contractual relationship with the board on which he serves. He's the employee and he's serving on a board that regulates that business. And that is no longer unethical, something that requires reporting or disclosure in the state of Louisiana. Think about that. But to add insult to injury, this year they made that they made that permissive rule retroactive. So people who had served on boards or were serving on boards in and also being employed by people who are doing business with the board in clear violation of the rules of ethics, retroactively, they haven't done anything wrong anymore. Just with the wave of a retroactive wand, Danielle, everything is good. And they never did anything wrong, but now the law has changed. And there's no requirement to disclose that direct conflict of interest between being an employee working for someone, a business, who is doing business with a board on which you serve. You and I both know that that should be categorically prohibited in the state of Louisiana. And it not only because it looks bad, but because it irresistibly invites impropriety and the kind of unethical behavior that our state is known for. And you know what their pushback was on it, Danielle Meller and others, was that in these small rural communities, a lot of people who serve on boards work for companies that do business with the boards because the communities are so small. Well, my response to that is make a decision. Make a decision about
That's right.
where you want to be. Do you want to serve on this important board and have the power that it brings? Or do you want to be loyal to the employer that you work for? But there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a rule that says you can't do both as a matter of fundamental ethics and propriety in the state. And again, Danielle, you just go back to the backdrop of our state. It's not like we have a pristine history. We should be bending over backwards in the other direction to try to rehabilitate, a rather sordid national reputation that our state has. And it doesn't look like we're doing that. It seems almost as though we're doubling down on it.
That's an absolutely asinine excuse, Chris. You have said repeatedly that there's over 500 boards and commissions in the state. So these are statewide boards, right? I mean, maybe are there boards that are sanctioned by the state? So just because someone is from a small town and happens to work in the industry, does that preclude them? Does that require them to serve on a board? I don't think so. I don't think
No,
so.
no.
And also, guess what? This is absolutely in pursuit of corruption because you can see in a lot of small towns the people who are on the boards that work in the that also work in the industry are tend to be the kind of people who rule the roost in small towns. And
So,
guess what?
so you're s-
They need to be able to diversify. They need to be mandated to diversify away from those people.
So you're saying that contrary to their argument as to why this should be allowed in the rural communities, you're saying that that's the very reason why it should not be
A
allowed
thousand
because
percent.
because of the sort of incestuous relationships that exist perhaps more intensely in small rural communities. I think that is a great point. That in that situation, the rules should be enforced even more rigidly,
Yeah.
because the chances of one person in a smaller rural community consolidating a great deal of power by doing both is much greater than it would be
Yeah.
in a big urban place, a big metropolitan district. I think you're right.
Absolutely.
It's a lot. Basically, what it comes down to, Danielle, it's a lot easier to be a big fish in a very small pond than a big fish in a very big pond, and that's what you're
Exactly.
getting at.
That's
But
exactly
that's
what I'm
such a
getting at.
brilliant point. Yeah,
The
brilliant
other
point.
thing I want to mention, Chris, is this. I serve on a nonprofit board. In our ethics rules, we can't just pay a board member to do work for the board, right? We can't just do that. And if we do, there's certain steps that you have to take, because guess who gets involved if you don't take those steps? The IRS. The IRS gets involved. So why is the state just sweeping that under the rug? Of course, the rules are different because the state gets to make the rules. But why? It's just mind blowing.
I told Danielle when I was down there, one of the points that I made. I don't know if you want to play my testimony from down
Shoot,
there.
I forgot to upload it, Chris. I
Well, when
forgot to
I'm
upload it while
talking,
we were talking. Hold
see
on.
if you
Yeah.
can upload it, because when I was down there and I felt very passionate about this bill, and I was just sitting before the committee and I said, you know what, Chris Alexander, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, I said, Chairman Boya, it sure would be nice if a citizen could engage in some kind of unethical behavior or questionable behavior that would otherwise be subject to investigation by an ethics board, or perhaps even subject to an arrest or a criminal prosecution, and then come down to the legislature after the fact and just make sure that a law gets passed that retroactively cleans it all up and says it wasn't wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Although the law in existence at the time that you did it says that it was wrong. Wouldn't that be nice, Danielle, if we had that kind of latitude as ordinary Louisiana citizens to sort of retroactively tabula rasa the past? I mean,
Of
and I, of course, there was no response to that. I think it was some
course not.
feeble response to it. But the fact of the matter is that is exactly what this bill is doing. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why it's in my top three hated pieces of legislation from this
Yeah,
session.
absolutely. It's almost uploaded, so just give me a
Yeah.
second and we'll play your testimony.
Yeah, but
Sorry about that.
and I know that I think it's such an interesting point that you make, that it is precisely in the smaller rural communities where these rules can and must be more rigidly enforced because of the possibility of one person gaining enormous power within a small community that would be
Anybody who lives
much
in a
more
small
difficult.
town understands that. That's just, it's just obvious. It's absolutely obvious. I don't think it qualifies as a brilliant point, Chris. I think it's an
I mean,
obvious one.
I didn't even think about it. I was just thinking across the board. I was just thinking. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of the practical difference between a
Yeah,
smaller community or bigger. I was thinking of it as a matter just of ethical sensibility,
right.
that this is just wrong to do this. It sends the wrong impression. It clearly creates the appearance, at a minimum, of impropriety, and very often, unfortunately, creates actual impropriety.
Yeah.
And now,
I can
in
I can
yeah,
play
but
the
let me
clip
say,
when you're ready. Yeah.
but let me say this, Daniel, real quick. There are two or three exceptions to the bill. You can't be, if you're the employee, you can't be in a high position. You can't have an ownership interest in it, and you cannot vote on anything on the board, any contracts or anything that are with your employer. So they have a few things in there that appear to make it better, but it really doesn't, because you know how we are, and we know how people can exercise influence in both formal and very informal ways. And if you're serving on a board, you can exercise influence and still violate these really rather meager exceptions that exist in this bill. It shouldn't be allowed.
No, it shouldn't be allowed. All right. Well, let's catch your testimony and then we'll talk about how the vote shaked out after that. Shook out.
Chris Alexander, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Just to be clear, this legislation does. It's my understanding that there was a time when it was prohibited under state law and under the ethics rules for a member of a board, municipal board, to be employed by a company that either had or was seeking a direct financial or contractual relationship with the board on which he is serving. And that was prohibited at one point in time in Louisiana. But apparently last year under HB 492, that's no longer prohibited. So now a person can be employed by a company that has a contractual relationship with the board on which that employee serves. I think that is absolutely inappropriate under all circumstances. But what makes it even worse, in our opinion, is that this bill, what Representative Mellerin is trying to do now, is to apply the new law retroactively. So even people who were under ethics investigation or had violated the ethics rules as they existed before are sort of getting a retroactive get-out-of-jail-free card here. I sure wish Louisiana citizens could come to the legislature and pass a bill that would retroactively exonerate them from potential ethical wrongdoing. That would be nice. Why does that apply to the legislature or to public officials on boards and municipalities, but it doesn't apply to regular Louisiana citizens? It's a rhetorical question because we're not supposed to ask question here, but I just think this is a gross double standard, and I think that it is, and we strongly oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Chris. Well, excellent testimony, and it didn't sound like they were too receptive because it passed
they
out.
weren't very receptive. No.
It passed out of House. Yeah, of course. It passed out of House and Governmental Affairs 10-0, passed the House floor without objection, and then it just kept on sailing right through. And I believe, Chris, it's been sent to the governor for signature.
For signature, yeah. And it's one of those things where they recognized, Chris Alexander may be sitting here, other people may be sitting here opposing this, but this bill is just too good for us. This is just too good for us. There's no way that we're not going to pass this bill because guess what? It protects all of us, and it allows all of us to do things that are not any less unethical in the true sense of the word, but will not get them into hot water anymore if they do it. And that's why they wanted to do it, because there's something in it for all of them. But I just believe, Danielle, and nobody that I would talk to on the street, if I were to paint this scenario with them, would say that that is okay or that that's a good look, because it's absolutely not. And it's going to be one that's going to be weighted on the LCAG scorecard, I can assure you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to move into my most hated bills, and we'll see. We'll see if we have time to even get to our most favorite bills. I don't know, Chris. We're taking up a lot of time on this, but I think it's good and it's important to talk through why these bills are so disgusting and despicable and cause such visceral reactions to us. But the first one on my list is House Bill 1085 by Representative Larry Bagley, and this bill started out in my favorite list. I've been wanting to get rid of inspection stickers for years. Do not comply. Anyway, the moral of the story is.
And by the way, you weren't complying. Can I say that?
I wasn't complying. I wasn't complying. Okay.
You weren't waiting for them to outlaw the inspection sticker to begin your non-compliance. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Yeah. I'm just following what the founders said, Chris, that any unconstitutional law doesn't need to be followed.
It's null and void, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, what happened was, and we've talked about this, people have heard about this, but they swapped out I don't really understand what's in it for Governor Landry, why he felt so strongly that, okay, well, we can get rid of the inspection stickers, but instead of that, we're going to put a QR code that states the car's VIN number on it, on your dashboard, on your windshield, right? And That's going to be $6 a year. It might be $6 every 2 years. They haven't decided that. And I just want to say why. Why? Because okay, whenever I had my rant on this and we put it on social media, people did weigh in, and I was ignorant of the fact that your VIN number is already on on your dashboard, already visible for cops to see. So that makes this even more useless as a feature. If you already have to have it displayed, why do you need it to be a QR code unless you are lining us up to put more data on there about our private lives for the police, for law enforcement to see? And people on social media have also had a hard time with me saying this. It is a it's a QR code, right? So we know that QR codes are readable by a cell phone. However, not all QR codes are probably readable by a cell phone, right? I'm sure there are certain encrypted QR codes that are only readable by certain devices. So that's my point. I want to know, is this just going to be readable by the cops, or is this going to be readable by everybody? Because we can see clearly that this is setting a precedent that they can add more and more of our personal data to the outside of our car so they can track us. And why do they need to do that? We already have a stinking license plate. We already have a driver's license. We already have the VIN number displayed. What else do they want? We already have the darn insurance companies tracking everything we do in our car, or the dealerships tracking everything we do in our car and reporting it to the insurance companies. Next, I'm sure they're going to report it to Jeff Landry directly that maybe I just did a rolling stop at a stop sign. I mean, would you get off my back with the nanny state? This is exactly what we're talking about, Chris, where liberties are infringed at every turn. Yeah, anytime you stand up and say, I want liberty, I want you to back off, they will not hear of it.
Yeah. Well, what they say, Danielle, on this deal is that there are, let's just say, cops on the side of the road, him having to manually print, type in the VIN number and manually get all this information. He may be sitting on the side of a highway, interstate, or whatever. It may take him 20 minutes longer or whatever to do what he's got to do rather than just snap the code and do all this digitally. That's one of the reasons. More, it's to give them more efficiency, to let them move to another job sooner, and apparently do more good in the 24-hour period that they're working or whatever. So it just makes it more efficient for them. That's the one excuse. The other thing that they say is that the way it's structured, the way it's coded, is that an ordinary citizen cannot get access to anything. They may try to snap that QR code, but nothing comes up. It's only law enforcement officers who have the capacity to key in there and get that information. That is stated in the bill, but that doesn't change the fact of what this could be leading to and whether or not this is necessary. The only excuse, the only explanation that I've been given that's remotely compelling is the one I just told you. If it really does reduce their amount of time on the side of a road or dealing with a motorist, sometimes in a stressful situation, by 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, then there's a practical reason for doing it this way.
Take a picture of the existing VIN number that's already on the dash.
And then get off the road and do your. Maybe it takes
Hello.
longer to do it, but yeah, I tend to agree with you on this. And the question is, what does this lead to? Is this going
Yeah.
to be leading to an advanced sort of Orwellian surveillance state in Louisiana at some point? And people look at you and say, "No, you're crazy. You're just a conspiracy theorist."
Well, I
But
guarantee, Chris, that if law enforcement cameras can read them, then I can tell you what's next. Those cameras that they use for speeding will be able to read them. Then the flock cameras will be able to read them. Then we will be completely digitally surveilled everywhere we go in our car.
Well, that's one of the big concerns against the bill, Danielle, was these flock cameras. You're driving down the road and they have the digital equipment, and you're just driving down the road and they have the ability to digitally find that information out about you when you're just driving down the road. And that raises a constitutional issue That raises a probable cause issue. It raises a due process issue. It raises a privacy issue. That if they have the capacity to do that, I'm not saying they're necessarily going to do it arbitrarily, but they certainly could. It could certainly lend itself to abuse. You could be driving down the road and you have it, not well, if you don't have to have an inspection sticker on the vehicle anymore, but basically you could be driving down the road and a law enforcement officer could be going this way and cue in with his QR code and be able to determine whether or not when the last time your vehicle was inspected, and any manner of other things about your vehicle just by you're going this way and he's going this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I hate this bill. I absolutely hate it. Only the Democrats voted against it, I guess, which was a little surprising, to be honest with you, because I feel like Democrats tend to vote in favor of surveillance. So I'm not exactly sure what their opposition to it was, but it passed the House 86-7, the Senate 27-7. And yeah, it's going to the governor to sign, and you can rest assured that he will sign it because it was his bill.
His bill. By the way, it's knee jerk reaction on the Democrats, Danielle. The 7 Democrats who voted against it, it's just knee jerk. They do it because they see all these Republicans voting for it, so it can't be good, so we're going to vote against it. And it happens all the time. And honestly, it happens on both sides.
Yeah, it does. And Lawrence is in the chat. Morning, Lawrence. Thanks for weighing in. He says, great subject. Thank you. Thanks for
Hey, Lawrence.
tuning in. And I saw that you've been in my chat this morning on Facebook as well. I owe you a comment back, so I'll be getting to
And
you.
Lawrence, I want to tell you as well, I appreciate the pump up this morning. After I read what you wrote, I'm like, man, we are absolutely doing our job up in here, and Lawrence notices it. So thank you for
It's
that,
awesome.
Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Chris. The next bill that I really, really loathe is House Bill 4 by your state rep, Dixon McMakin, and it was his proposed constitutional convention. This is the second time we've seen someone try and bring a constitutional convention. Do you recall, did he bring it last time as well?
Yes, he did, but it died very. I mean, it literally got no traction.
Yeah, yeah. And this time, okay, this time, let me see, it passed in House Governmental Affairs. It passed 8-6. Rodney Shammerhorn was the only Republican who voted against it. It passed the House floor on May 12th, 64-32. 30 Democrats voted against it. One Democrat voted in favor of it, Kyle Green. We'll come back to that. 63 Republicans voted for it, and 2 Republicans voted against it, and that was Beryl Amity and again, Rodney Shammerhorn. It was considered in Senate and Governmental Affairs. It failed 1-4, and only Senator Miguez voted in favor of it. So it never made it to the Senate floor for a final vote. And why I hate this bill is because I don't trust these people as a group. As a group, I don't trust our public elected officials. I just don't. They have made it very abundantly clear that they cannot abide by the Constitution we have. So why should we trust them to change it? Because look, Chris, here you are. You just talked about how much you hated this retroactive ethics violation bill where they are able to cover over illegalities or ethics violations that they did before they were found to be, or, before we said that they were no longer ethical. So imagine what they will do with the Constitution if that is the case. No, I do
Yeah.
not trust this, Sam. I am. I will not eat green eggs and ham. Absolutely not. Not in a house, not with a mouse. No, I don't want a constitutional convention. I will take a constitutional convention under certain circumstances. Fix our stinking elections.
Exactly. Fix the elections, and then we'll have a constitutional convention, and then we will be able to hold you accountable in a very robust manner for what you do at that constitutional convention. So I certainly understand the importance of the accountability part of this. But another thing about this, Danielle, they're going to be able to establish the parameters of this constitutional convention to
Yeah.
basically do anything. You've heard of a runaway constitution, where they go in and they start toying with things in the constitution that absolutely should never be toyed with. They take things out of the Constitution and put them in statute that belong there. They may add things to the Constitution that are really statutory matters. And right now, we don't know what the frame, we don't know what the, we know what the procedural setup is. We know how the delegates are going to be elected. We know what's going to happen there. We know when these meetings are going to be heard. So the procedural thing is set up, but the substance of it is not. And there has to be some very, very clear defining parameters with regard to the substance of what will be addressed.
Yeah.
What in the Constitution specifically are you concerned about? What provisions? What do you intend to leave alone? What kind of commitments can we extract from you that you're not going to touch? For instance, the Second Amendment, let's just say, or that you're not going to touch the provision in our Constitution that requires that votes be counted publicly in the state of Louisiana.
This is my exact point, Chris. This is my exact point. And last year, I'll stand corrected. I just remembered that it was Representative Bo Boye who brought this bill, and we reached out to him with that exact concern that they would be messing with the way that our elections are protected. That provision, and I believe if I remember, Chris, I think he was like, "Well, we've made too many carve outs already. We can't do anything about it." So, look, I'm very happy that it failed last year. I'm very happy that it failed this year. And this is the exact kind of nonsense. Can you imagine they go into the Constitution, make it retroactively legal for them to not hold elections in a transparent manner? Counted same day and whatever the exact provisions are. I'm not they're not coming to mind right now, but publicly they must be counted publicly. Yeah, what if that's retroactively made legal to cover so many butts in this state?
Exactly, exactly. Not that constitutional provision is vigorously enforced in the state. It's not
Correct.
enforced at all. But
Yet,
there's a difference between having a perfectly enforceable constitutional requirement that's not being enforced and in not having one at all. And there's a big difference there. See, what he wants to do, Danielle, do you remember Nancy Pelosi's bill, Obamacare? And she said, I don't know what's in it. We've got to pass it, and then we can find out what's in it.
yeah.
There's a degree of parallel here where Dixon McMakin is saying, give us the authority to have the Constitutional Convention, and then we'll start talking about and deciding what we're going to be discussing and what we're going to be removing and what we're going to be leaving in, what we're going to be putting in statute. That's not
No,
how
thank
this
you.
works.
No,
The
thank
people
you.
deserve a commitment and well-defined parameters in which you're going to be exploring issues that you're going to be focused on. We don't have any of that, and you're asking for the people to approve a constitutional convention when we have no idea what's going to be on the other side of that door. We have a right to know what's on the other side of that door before we authorize you to walk through that door. It's that simple.
Yeah. Well, I think well said, Chris. And I'll get to my last most hated bill. And we may move the favored bills to Thursday, to tomorrow. And
Yeah.
we can cover them tomorrow just because I didn't I underestimated how passionate we were about these bills.
But you understand my fundamental concern about HB4, about this proposed constitutional amendment. I know you understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
1,000%. I agree with you. I agree with you. And the legislature has proven that if you give them an inch, they'll take 10 miles. So I don't have any interest in doing that.
Another thing, Danielle, the last point before we move on. Do you remember in March of 2025 the ferociously hard push to pass a constitutional amendment that would have stripped constitutional protections for religious organizations out of the Constitution and just put them in statute? We vehemently opposed that because we're talking about churches who have historically always been granted tax exemptions for their property and for their work. And you pull that out of the Constitution, you make them much more vulnerable through statute to being repealed. But that's what they were trying to do. How do we know you're not going to go down there in a constitutional convention and try to do that? because
Yeah.
you've already tried to do. How do we know that you're not through a constitutional convention going to go try for the third time to raid educational trust funds in the Constitution so that you can pay down teacher debt to give the teachers a raise? We have no idea what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, because this is nothing but this bill is just basically a threadbare framework of the procedure of how electors are going to be chosen, of when they're going to be meeting, of what the formalities of things are going to be. But there's nothing on the merits, on the subject matter, or on the substance of what is actually going to be altered, amended, changed, or moved. That's the issue.
Yeah. And now, to be fair, the Constitutional Convention would come up with a final product, a final proposed revised constitution. They would send it to the people for a vote, right? It would be voted on as a full constitutional amendment, so to speak. But I don't trust our elections. I don't trust that they are carried out faithfully. I don't trust that the way that these changes would be made would be transparent to people, would be made understandable to people. One of the main problems people have with the constitutional amendments as they're put forward on the ballot is they are not given enough information to know what they're voting on, and so they tend to vote no because they're pissed off that you are telling them, oh, we're moving funds from one source to another source, and it's going to do something great. Well, no, you haven't given us any information on that, and you've given us absolutely no reason to trust you. So we're not going to vote for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am confident that the people would feel that way about a constitutional convention. So why should we spend all of the money to have this and
Yeah.
all of the effort that you and I and many, many others across the state would spend doing lobbying efforts, trying to get things put in there that would be appropriate to a solid constitution, and then only to come to the finish line with some, Frankenstein-looking constitution, most probably, to have it struck down by the people, voted down by the people. So,
Voted down by the people. And the way to avoid that is to make sure that you've got weigh-in, input, and constructive dialogue with the citizens before you make a decision about what issues you're going to be addressing,
yeah,
about how you're going to be approaching all this from a substantive point of view. But do not expect us, and I don't believe this died, right? This is not going
yeah,
before the people.
it's
Is that
not
right?
going.
It
It's not.
died, yeah. But I would say that if it had passed and was going before the people, I would say the exact same argument that I'm making here to encourage people to vote against it. Then they're not telling you what you are voting on.
Yeah,
They're wanting you to authorize them to go in and toy with the fundamental governing document of our state, and they're not telling you what the parameters are. They're not telling you what they're intending to do specifically. And we have a right to know that before we approve this. That's the difference. And I think Dixon McMakin has this a bit backwards. I am maybe not as glee-filled as you are, Danielle, that this failed, but I'm kind of up there with you on this.
yeah. And just my closing thought on this, Chris, is oh, it was so good too. What was it? Oh, it just flew away from me. You you were talking about, help me out here because I
Yeah.
do want to make that thought. Help me out. We were just
Uh,
talking about,
I was talking about the importance of not putting the cart before the horse here. I was talking about the importance of making sure that they are completely transparent with the people about what their objectives are. And you can't just say, we're going to have a constitutional convention. It's time to have a constitutional convention. And, they'll say something like, there's a bunch of things in this Constitution that really should be in statute. We've got to deal with that. And we maybe need to beef up some other constitutional provisions. But they're very short on specifics. They don't tell you what article, what section, what subject matter they're going to be dealing with. I'm not giving our legislature carte blanche to go in and toy with our Constitution unless there are some pre-established constraints on the scope of their activities.
yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, and the point I was going to make is one I already made but wanted to underscore, which is show a little respect for the Constitution we have before you go and try and tell us that you're going to change it.
Well, you know what, Daniel? That's a great point. How about we'll give you 1 year, Dixon, to show that you can fully honor the Louisiana Constitution as it is currently written, and then you will have earned the right to request the opportunity to go in and change it. But until you start following the one we have, we can't let you do it. You're disqualified. I like
That's
that.
that's for the whole legislature. That's not just
It's
that's
not
not
just for
just for
Dixon. We're
McMakin.
not just picking on Dixon. We are picking on Dixon, but not just Dixon.
Correct. All right. And my last most hated bill is another proposed constitutional amendment, House Bill 752 by Representative Kyle Green, and it would have overhauled how the regular legislative sessions are scheduled and operated. And they would have moved the regular session to early in January. So what does that mean? That means that me and you, instead of spending our Christmases with our families, will be looking at 6,000 bills.
That are going to be rolled out in very intense form in the first week of January. I mean, you're exactly right, Danielle. And maybe that too is by design because they don't want the watchdogs there. They don't
It's
want people who are vigilantly watching what they are doing. And maybe that's part of the reason.
And it's not just that, right? It was a removal of existing deadlines and restrictions. So no deadlines for pre-filing, introducing and final passing. So this means that anytime during the session, they could file more bills. They could dump 600 bills 2 weeks before the end of session.
Exactly.
It's completely insane, and it is absolutely overly making their job easy while overly making our job absolutely impossible.
And I made the point when I was testifying in committee, Danielle. I said, you know, Chairman Boya, this is a protection. This is a constitutional protection that protects not just citizen advocates. It protects you because you're not going to be 2/3 through a session and you have a data dump of two or three or 400 bills that you've got to review to figure out how to vote on. And you know what, Danielle? That did not stun them one single bit. And perhaps, and my thought walking out was, well, they probably don't read most of these bills to begin with until
Right.
they get into the committee. So what do they care? But we have to read them. We
Yeah.
have to read them because we have to know how they affect ordinary citizens like me and you. And it is grossly unfair. Right now, they can file a certain amount of bills pre-file, and there's an absolute deadline. I think it's 10 days before it starts, no more pre-filing. And then once the session starts, you can file, I think 20 days in or 25 days in,
Yeah.
you can file bills during the session. But there comes a very clearly defined point where me and Danielle do not have to worry about going back to a legislative database and finding another 250 bills that we have to review. And we take a big sigh of relief going, here's what we got. We know it's a lot, but we don't have to worry about anything more coming down the tunnel. This bill will do away with that. And if you think it's stressful for us right now as small advocates, imagine what it's going to be like when we get those kind of data dumps 2/3 through a session. I think this is a horrible bill. I am 100% on board with you on this. Maybe not the heat or the fire of 1,000 suns, but I guarantee you I have a rapidly warming up ironing board.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this is also a bill that would not too horribly impact groups like Lobby or the NRA or even, these massive organizations that have funders and staffs. It disproportionately disenfranchises us and our ability to keep tabs on things. And just because the bills stop coming doesn't mean the resolutions stop coming. Even right now, there are resolutions that are filed up until basically the bitter end, right? I don't know if there even is a filing deadline for House resolutions. So we really, I mean, honestly, cannot keep tabs on those because they just keep populating like rabbits.
So there's already certain instruments that you can file all the way up to
Yeah.
the end of the session
Yeah.
right now. It's not like, so you're right. But Danielle, another advantage that the lobbies and the NRAs have that we don't have is that they are either single issue organizations
Right.
or are very narrowly focused on the issues that they're concerned about. We're concerned about any and every issue that impacts the Constitution and negatively or positively impacts the lives of Louisiana citizens. So that by necessity expands the reach and the scope of our work. We have
Yeah.
so much more to do. So there could be a data dump 2/3 through the end of a session, 200 or 300 bills that the NRA has absolutely no concern about because it's got
Right.
nothing to do with what they do or lobby. But I guarantee you that a bunch of those bills will concern us because of the nature of what we do. So it makes it even more disadvantageous to us to do this.
Exactly. Exactly. You're so right. And I was looking at the Second Amendment bills, for instance, to see what bills were brought, which bills, had any debate. There are probably fewer than 10. So just to give people an example, right? So say that the NRA, as an example, had 10 bills to follow for the Louisiana legislative session this year. Do you know how many bills we followed? Over 300. Over 300. And there are some areas that we probably dropped the ball. In fact, I learned about one this morning that made me so angry I could go into a fit of rage. And you will know about that fit of rage tomorrow. But in fact, it's amazing that I'm not bursting into the fit of rage right now. But
Well, this is the first
I'll
time,
withhold
Danielle.
myself.
I guarantee you that doesn't happen often. To your credit, this is the third year or so that we've done this, and that's very, very rare for you. And maybe we probably looked at it together, and maybe it looked innocuous on the surface of it. But that is extremely rare that we would miss something that ends up
I
being
know.
extremely important. We may miss it on a first go through, but we generally go back during the session and find it and claim it and move on it. But I'm interested to know what bill that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that tomorrow.
We will. But I will just let everybody know how this bill landed. So it passed House and Governmental Affairs with some amendments, 9-4. There were four Republicans who voted against it. It was Beth Billings, Les Farnham, Foy Gadberry, and Rodney Shammerhorn. Hearing that Rodney Shammerhorn name a couple times this morning on the good side. So thank you for standing up for us, Representative Shammerhorn. Really appreciate that. And it passed House Civil Law and Procedure, 7-zip. It went to appropriations, but no motions were made to vote on it. So thank God it died a death of inertness in House appropriations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord is right. So we will come back, like I said, tomorrow and talk about our most favored bills, which, it doesn't mean it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows because they didn't all land where we wanted them to. So
But
be
some of them
prepared for
did.
that. But some of them did.
Yeah.
Some of them got in the neighborhood.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, Danielle, about being a legislative advocate is that, and maybe it's just because of the nature of the beast, that they offer and move so many bills that are so horrendous, so violative of the Constitution, so bad policy for the citizens of the state, that we do probably spend a disproportionate amount of our time trying to kill the bad bills over and above advancing good bills. Although we love to advance good bills, there just seems to be an awful lot of bad ones down there.
Yeah, there's an awful, awful lot of bad ones, and I guess y'all will hear about a tremendous number of them because we're not letting this go. I have no interest in letting this go. I think the public needs to absolutely know how things landed this session. I think people need to know what's in store for them in terms of the changes that are coming to their life because of the laws that were passed, and they need to know how their representatives and senators voted so that they can keep that in mind, lodge that firmly in their mind for whenever next year comes around, because next year, as you know, is an election year again, and there are a lot of people who will not deserve to retain their seats.
Let's say their seat. And the only way you're going to know whether or not they deserve to retain their seat is through the state of freedom, because you're going to hear their names, you're going to hear the bills, you're going to hear how they voted on things that directly impact you, and
Yeah.
you're going to be able to make a fully informed decision about whether you're going to reelect them. And that's why the state of freedom is so valuable, because there isn't another podcast. There isn't another portal through which you can get this vital information so that you can make one of the Danielle, one of the main reasons why we continue to elect these rhinos, continue to elect these self enriching politicians, is that their voters honestly do not know what they're doing or have not known what they're doing up until we started to get involved. And
Yeah.
our goal is to continue to make sure that they all know exactly what their elected officials are doing, and that will change some things. And there are going to be some things that are changing. You alluded to it earlier, Danielle, in the elections that are coming up. I guarantee you that 30% of the members of the House Natural Resources Committee, 40% maybe more, are not going to be returning to the state legislature. I can guarantee it right now. They will not be reelected. There are others who've done some other things who will not be. And that is because of the heat that we have brought to bear, and not just on carbon capture and sequestration, other issues as well. But the last thing I want to say here, Danielle, is we want y'all to continue to listen to the State of Freedom, because we are going to be mentioning the names, and tie them to the bills, tell you what they are. And some of these things are going to make you very angry. When
Yeah.
we explain to you what this bill would have done, and you find out how your representative voted on it, it's going to make you angry.
Yeah.
And it should make you angry. Other times, you'll find out that there was a good piece of legislation, a tough piece, but a good piece, and your representative stood up and fought for it. So you'll be pleasantly happy about that. But you have to know everything if you're really going to participate in the democratic process and elect the people that you want. Otherwise, we will continue to exist in this kind of recycling hemorrhage where one person, resigns, someone else gets elected, but it's basically the same ball and chain once you get in there.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And just a reminder for folks, if you are not yet supporting the State of Freedom, please do that. You can do it by just as little as $10 a month, or if you're under $35 a month, you can do it at join.freedomstate.us. Help us to stay in the fight here. And you saw a little taste this morning of what Chris is bringing to the legislature in terms of looking the legislators in the eye and letting them know, hey, you're not just going to be able to pass this retroactive, you know, self-protection law without it going on the public record that we see what you're doing, we know what you're doing, we disagree with what you're doing, and we are watching your fingers hit that button and say, guess what? We're doing it anyway. And guess what? Our fingers have buttons too.
Our fingers have buttons too. Dale Clary paid me a compliment the other night, Danielle. I went to speak at Convention of States, and he said, Chris, I've talked to a lot of those people down there, and one thing I can say about you, and it was a compliment he paid me, he said, they don't always like to see you coming, but they always know when you're there. And I said,
Amen.
well, thank you for that compliment, Dale. So I want to say this, Danielle, as far as LeCag goes, y'all contribute to LeCag. You could become a member of LeCag for the cost of a large pizza per month, $22, $25. And if we have enough citizens across the state who believe in what we're doing here, creating transparency in government, and making sure that the citizens know what is really going on inside of those halls, inside of those walls down there, we're going to change things, and we are going to begin to level the balance of power down there with all the special interest groups and all the money and all the rest of it. I would rather have 10,000 Louisiana citizens donating $22 a month to LeCag than three huge multi-billion-dollar corporations doing the same thing or more. I would much rather be on the side of the citizens. And by asking citizens from across the state to donate what they're able and to become a member for what they're able, we're not asking any one citizen to do anything that is beyond their reach. And that's what I love about it. And we get to remain faithful to the citizens, and we don't become compromised to a big corporation that happens to be donating money to the State of Freedom, because that makes us less effective and compromised. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I have a couple requests as well. So if you're watching and you are a business owner in the state of Louisiana and you are a proud patriot and you like what we're doing here and want to advertise with us, please reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly or Chris directly. I'm Danielle at freedomstate.us. Chris is Chris at lacag.org. We'd love to hear from you, or if you know of business owners who should be advertising with us. For crying out loud, please tell them and put us in touch. We would love that. We would absolutely love that. And the other thing I wanted to just mention is I have a list here, Chris, of some of the topics that we plan to cover in terms of our readout. And I would just like to hear from the viewers what ones are most interesting. If there's any on this list that if there's any that are not on this list that you want to hear about, put it in the chat. Let us know what it is that you are concerned about. But some of the ones that we have, and this is not a comprehensive list, I just started this yesterday. We intend to do an episode on carbon capture, sequestration, and private property rights. We intend to do one on elections and the election related and redistricting related bills from this session. One on the Second Amendment, pro-life and parental rights, criminal justice, national security, legalization of corruption and local
Yes,
cartels.
the corruption bills, a number of them.
Yeah, and there's not just corruption, but there is the legislature rubber stamps local cartels, and we'll be getting into that. We'll be talking about taxes and government spending, health freedom and the MAHA agenda, government overreach, education and DEI, and the list goes on and on. That's my list so far, and
Yeah.
it's not complete. So we absolutely welcome your input on what you want to hear about. Some things we're thinking about not talking about. For instance, what happened with a lot of legislation on artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about the data centers. I'm just talking about the way that people interact and criminal. There's certain actions that have been criminalized as it pertains to AI. I think we've looked at a lot of those, Chris, and they seem to be mostly common sense. So we were kind of thinking about leaving those on the shelf and not talking about them. But if people are particularly interested in what happened with the AI bills this session, we can do a deeper dive on that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We know them. I mean, we know
We
the bills. We absolutely can do that. And on one show, Danielle, I want to go through, and I'll just want to go through I want to go through all of the bills that were designed to enrich or camouflage corruption in our government. There were a number of those. And I want to go through also the bills that were designed to clean that corruption up. And we'll see how the first category ended up and how the second category often ended up. And I think you'll be very, very interested in how that worked out.
Yeah, I think people will begin to recognize the patterns that we have seen, the unfortunate patterns that we have seen. Although there's fortunate patterns, I mean, don't get this wrong, there are good legislators who are fighting for their constituents and they are doing their level best. We don't want to leave you with the impression that the whole group of them is uniformly working against the public. But as a group, it's very difficult to get them to pass good legislation. It's extremely difficult to get them to do things that are going to benefit the people of this state. And it seems like it's been pretty easy for them to pass bills that will benefit themselves. So we have to make that mention. But I do want to always give a big caveat that there are some lone warriors out there who are fighting for us. There's just a
Yeah.
handful, two handfuls of people who consistently try to do the right thing, who consistently stand for their constituents, and we do not want to leave the impression that those representatives and senators do not exist.
And those good ones need us, and they tell us
Yeah.
so often how much they need us there, and they need our infrastructure, they need our knowledge, they need our ability, they need our resources to help them. So I just encourage everyone, when you pray tonight, if you have concerns that you don't feel like you're getting the truth from your government, and I know many of you feel like you're being lied to by your government. Maybe you're getting a partial truth, a little truth here and there. We are your platform to get the whole truth, and not only to report the truth to you, but to fight for truth in the legislature and on the state of freedom so that we can make this state a place where we have 40,000 people who want to come here in a 3-year period instead of 40,000 who want to leave.
Yeah. Amen, Chris. Well, just one announcement on the way out. Actually, I'll make two announcements. One is we will be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central, and we will be sharing with you our list of each of our favorite bills of the session.
Might
So
surprise some of you.
yeah, they may surprise some of you. So that will be a fun episode. And then I also just want to put in a plug for We the People Bayou. We are having an event on the 11th, which is next Thursday, and it is featuring Ed Tarpley, and he's coming to talk to us about immigration and what's at stake in the midterms. So if you are in the Houma region, in the Bayou region, or if you want to travel, we would love to see you. That's going to be 6 o'clock. And you can go to wtpbayou.org and register there just to save your seat. Let us know you're coming so we can make sure to have enough seats in the room. And I think that's it for me, Chris.
I think
Anything?
that's it, Danielle, but there's something that I wanted to tell you
Yeah?
that I didn't get to tell you earlier, but I'm very excited about something. You know who's in town?
Who is it?
This. The boys are back in town, baby.
Your boys? That's
I
awesome.
always do this when the boys get back in town.
That's awesome. Well, tell
All right,
all of them
love
I
you.
said hello. Give them a hug.
Okay, you too.
And I'll see you in the morning, Chris. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye. I'm trying.
Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties. Mainly, they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly, you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment, and they are the best. Pokey Claw, right here in Mid-City in Baton Rouge. It's Baton Rouge's newest claw machine arcade. Jenin absolutely loves it. Packed with Pokemon gear and fun for all ages. You got to go to Pokey Claw. I love it. Jenin wants to go there every Saturday. It's just a wonderful place to go for the family, for the kids. Pokey Claw.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.